This video is going to be pretty easy. Not a lot to choose from. Well, there are quite a few, but in terms of Netflix scale, it's not as many as I would like. What is up, Flick fans, and welcome back to my channel. Today, as I have been doing for the last few months, I'm going to tell you guys 5 movies on Netflix right now that you can watch of a specific genre or kind, or starring a certain actor. I have a plethora of these style of videos coming out in the next few months, but today we are talking about something very specific and something that could possibly be asked about this upcoming week because we have a major comic book movie dropping in Captain Marvel. But if you guys want to cleanse that superhero loving palate, you can go on Netflix right now and catch some films today. I'm going to talk about those, and no, this is not going to be an MCU Marvel filled episode, but I will hit on some films that are a bit more obscure that you probably have heard of before, but maybe you haven't seen. That's what we're doing today. Thank you guys as always for joining me. Get down in the comments section below. Out of all of these movies, I'm not ranking them, but tell me, what is your favorite, what is your least favorite, and let me know if there is one on there that I did not mention or did not talk about. I'm only doing 5. There are, of course, going to be other films. Let's start with number 1. And up first, I have V for Vendetta. So in the future, a shadowy freedom fighter known only by the alias of V plots to overthrow it with the help of a young woman. This is a slightly older film. It came out in 2005, and I can't believe I'm saying 2005 is old, but it's 2019. That was 14 years ago, and I cannot believe it. But this is a movie that often goes overlooked when you're talking about really good, intense, and dark comic book movies. It has this feel to it that you do not find in superhero-esque films nowadays. I know it's not technically a superhero film, but you could argue that there are characteristics in the characters in this film that are similar to that of a superhero movie, and it definitely has that comic book movie flair because it is, of course, based on prior source material. There are some very standout scenes in this film, very visual and memorable movies. You can tell that there was this stylistic approach to this film that, once again, you just don't see nowadays. I compare it to a movie like 300. And I know that's random, but in a way that certain action scenes were filmed, and you have 2 really standout stars in this film in Natalie Portman, who is awesome as our girl that we're kind of following along through this journey. I got a Snapchat. And also Hugo Weaving, who is incredible in pretty much everything he touches, or anytime he gets his hand on source material that we know of. Of course, he was in Captain America, the First Avenger, as Red Skull. He was Megatron in Transformers, and I think he's really good as both of those characters. But when you talk about Hugo Weaving's defining comic book movie role, I might give it to him as V in V for Vendetta. I really just like seeing that this film is on Netflix because I haven't watched it in a while, and it might be the one out of all 5 of these choices that I'm going to go back and revisit just because it's been so long. Next up is Zack Snyder's Watchmen. So in 1985, where former superheroes exist, the murder of a colleague sends active vigilante Rorschach into his own sprawling investigation, uncovering something that could completely change the course of history as we know it. And the other film that I wanted to compare V for Vendetta to is actually Watchmen, just that stylistic approach that I was talking about that I love so much in that movie. It is present in Watchmen, and Watchmen is actually a movie for me that has gotten better with time. I loved V for Vendetta when I first saw it, which was after 2005, but Watchmen, when I first saw it, I said, you know what, this is really good, but I don't necessarily love it. As we have progressed as movie lovers, I guess, as a whole, from what I can tell online, the love for Watchmen has gotten stronger. I know there's the director's cut and the ultimate cut. There are so many cuts of this film, I don't necessarily know which one is which, but I know I have watched 2 cuts, and the longer cut that I watched was a lot better than the original cut, but I do think both films have things that work very well for them. And the more I think about this film, the more I feel as if Zack Snyder was a bit ahead of the game. This film came out at a time when superhero movies like this, superhero-centric, not films like V for Vendetta, but this was doing something that other superhero-esque movies like Iron Man and even The Dark Knight were not doing at the time. It's just visual splendor. There are themes and elements of this film that are so far out there and beyond what you imagine in a movie that is centered around comic book characters that it takes a while to get your head wrapped around it completely, and some will never get their heads wrapped around it and they just don't like the movie, and I get it. I have aspects of this film that I don't necessarily love. When someone says, hey, Watchmen, it's just too much for me. There is so much going on. I sit back and I go, you know what? I agree with that. I can't necessarily argue you too strongly, but the more I watch this film, the more I just really enjoy it. I love the characters. I love the battles. I love the action. I love the emotional undertones, especially of a character like Rorschach. My goodness, played beautifully by Jackie Earle Haley. And I encourage you guys, if you want to see a superhero film that is different, now you have to set aside 3 hours because it's a very long movie, but I do think the 3 hours is worth it, and I encourage you guys to give it a shot. It is on Netflix right now. At number 3, I'm cheating. I'm going back and doing the thing that you guys expected me to do throughout the entire video and name off MCU movies, but instead of making it 1 through 5, I'm just going to make it number 3 and tell you that there are quite a few on Netflix right now, but I'm going to group them because A, you've probably seen them before, and B, it is a good group of films to go back and rewatch, especially before Friday when Captain Marvel comes out, and especially before Endgame comes out, because that's next month. But you have Ant-Man and the Wasp, Black Panther, Thor Ragnarok, of course, Avengers Infinity War, and some people forget that Guardians Volume 2 is still on here, so that is quite a few Marvel movies on Netflix that you guys can go check out right now if you're behind or if you need to catch up. Speaking of the devil, I do have a video coming out this week where I'm going to give you guys the definitive order of how you should watch the MCU movies, all the way from the beginning to the end. What order? What movie should I start with? Should I start with Iron Man? Should I do it timeline-wise and start with Captain America? I'm going to give you guys my thoughts on how I would do it because I actually have a friend whose wife has never seen any of the films in the MCU, and he asked me that question, and it sparked an idea, and I said, you know what, that's a great YouTube video to make. And this week, of course, is Captain Marvel week, so if you want to prepare, you can come to my channel because I have a lot of Marvel videos coming out, or you can go to Netflix. See, I'm centering back around to my original point. You can go to Netflix right now and watch all of these movies. I would talk about them, but that's coming. And we have come to Hellboy. So a demon raised from infancy after being conjured by and rescued from Nazis grows up to become a defender against the forces of darkness. Next up, I think I said V for Vendetta was the oldest. Well, I was wrong because we're going back one more year and talking about another very visually and stylistically incredible movie in Hellboy. And I'm not saying, oh, it's the best movie I've ever seen, but if you're talking about visuals, whether it's makeup or prosthetics or how the creatures look, you know Guillermo del Toro is going to deliver in that aspect. But I just think Hellboy is a cool movie. It doesn't hold up in all regards. I don't think the film itself is incredible, but the experience while you're watching it, whether it's laughing at how Ron Perlman plays this character because he is awesome. I wanted to see him back in Hellboy 3, but we didn't get it. I'm accepting the fact that we have a remake, even though the trailers aren't necessarily doing it for me, but then you look at where this story goes and how interesting it gets. I never anticipated to care as much as I did about Hellboy and to want a sequel in the Golden Army that I believe delivered as a pretty solid sequel as well. I wanted a third movie in this trilogy, but that all started, it all spawned from the first Hellboy film. It is so much fun, and it's nice to go back and relive a movie that is from a year like 2004 where they were doing things very differently back then, but the humor and the way that the characters interact, I think all of that holds up today, and Hellboy is a fun film to revisit. It's on Netflix once again right now. And finally, Scott Pilgrim versus the world. So Scott Pilgrim must defeat his new girlfriend's 7 evil exes in order to win her heart. One of the most obscure of all the obscurities when we're talking about comic book movies. It is so different and out there and wacky and zany, and it feels like a video game, and it's based on a comic book. That is Scott Pilgrim versus the World. This is a movie that the first time I watched it, I really enjoy it, but on subsequent rewatches, I do not just enjoy this movie, I love this movie. This is one of my favorite Edgar Wright films. This is one of my favorite films of that year. It is so much fun. The humor works for me on all levels. The cast is awesome. The chemistry is incredible. If you think it's too cheesy and the jokes don't work, let's just say if you're not in it within the first 20-25 minutes, then you're not going to love the film, and that's okay. There are plenty of other options on Netflix, but if you want something that is so self-aware, it knows exactly what it is, all throughout. It takes a bit to get used to and adjusted to how insane this world is, how the words pop up on screen. It really is a comic book come to life, and it's also a movie that I think video game lovers are going to enjoy because it plays on those tropes and those aspects, and it also holds some incredible video game-esque action scenes. It's just a really fun movie. If you want to see Chris Evans when he was younger and he's playing a villain, that's great. If you want to see Brandon Routh, the first Superman and Superman Returns, do something, well, not the first Superman, I guess he's the second Superman live act, but there are more Supermen on television, so he's like the 11th. He's in this movie. Brie Larson, Captain Marvel. You have a stacked cast, and you have a really good director that is just awesome at bringing his ideas, or his ideas that are based off prior things, to life. He does that with Scott Pilgrim versus the World. And if you're asking me, Austin, which one's the favorite movie on this list? Since I didn't dive into the MCU films, out of the other 4 that I talked about, I'd have to say Scott Pilgrim versus the World. But I acknowledge it's not a film for everyone because it's so obscure, because it's so out there. But it is on Netflix right now. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. This is a lot of fun. I love talking about things that are out there for you guys to see that you don't have to pay an extra price for. Yes, you have to pay the monthly subscription for Netflix, but you can go and just see anything you want to see with your friends and your family. And that's what it's all about. That's what movies are made for. They are made for you guys to enjoy. And I appreciate you watching this video and leaving your comments below and liking this video if you want more of these, because if you like this and you enjoy talking about streaming platforms, let me know, because I do plan on doing more things, but I don't want to do it if it's something that you do not want to see. I appreciate everything you guys do for me. Be sure to get down in the description below. There's some very cool things and some opportunities for you guys. I hope you will join me this week for the Captain Marvel build-up. I have some very cool and different videos, things I have never done before. You are the absolute best as always, and I will catch you very soon.